There's no doubt that Tasmania has a rich horticultural heritage, and with that comes some great horticultural families, and the Magnuses are one of those. Many years ago, I was able to visit the doyen of apple growing, Bob Magnus, and a couple of years ago, I visited the wonderful garden of his son, Dan Magnus, and today I'm visiting Dan's brother, Nick, making today part 3 of my Magnus Opus. I've driven an hour south of Hobart to get a masterclass in tree grafting from an expert with the scalpel, assistant surgeon and master grafter, Dr. Nick Magnus.
Grafting and surgery, in my mind, are pretty similar, really, in that they are cutting and joining tissue. It's not really that much difference for me.
G'day, Nick.
Hey, Tino.
Good to see you again, mate.
Thanks for dropping by.
See you still chopping stuff up and sticking it back together. A lot of people seem scared almost of grafting and don't understand why we do it.
Well, grafting really is all about taking one variety of plant and propagating it, making almost a clone of it.
So what parts of a tree does a beginner need to start grafting with?
Well, you basically need 2 parts. You need a rootstock, and that basically is the bit that's going to be in the ground. So rootstocks are selected especially for their qualities to disease resistance and the way their roots work to fuel the tree. And the other part is the signwood, and that is the word that we use to describe the variety that we then graft with.
What makes good signwood?
You've got to get the signwood when it's dormant. So you can pretty well already start getting the signwood collected in as early as May, you know, when the leaves fall off. And the other thing is to get new wood. If you follow it from the tip, you come all the way down here, and then there's this notch here in the stem. That signifies 1 year of growth. So when I cut it, that's where I want to cut it from. So I've got a bunch of tools here that I need to use for grafting.
What makes a good grafting knife in your opinion?
Well, a grafting knife just needs to be really sharp. But this is my father's old knife. It's done hundreds and thousands of grafts and it's still really good. Well, look, we've got our signwood that we've harvested, and then we've got a rootstock here. This one I'm using a dwarfing apple called M26. We'll have to connect those together.
Now, there's a bunch of different grafting techniques. What's your favourite?
Look, I pretty well exclusively use the whip and tongue graft. And the reason for that, Tino, is that it wedges together really well so that the graft is really stable. If it gets a slight knock, it doesn't break, and it's good in wind as well.
So can you take us through your technique?
Well, so I've got my rootstock here. I usually cut it to the right length, and I want the graft to be a good 20 centimetres or 15 centimetres above the ground. And then I'll start with my first cut. I want it really nice and flat and a nice wedge, so preferably in one cut. So I divide it up into 3. A third from the end there is where I make my cut, and I try and cut in at least a third of the way in there. I also try and make a really flat cut there. The signwood then mirrors that. So I'm freshening it up so I've got some nice fresh wood. And I'm making my wedge again. It's nice to make sure that they're the same length. And again, with a nice rocking motion, cut my tongue. And I can then cut it to sort of 3 buds or 4 buds above the graft. Then I just gently ease them together so that at the end of it, both the cambium layers on both sides are nicely matched up.
And is that the most important thing, marrying up those cambium layers?
Yes, that's right. So at least one side you want to marry up. The other thing I try and do is keep the bottom of the signwood nice and snug into the rootstock. If I leave it like this, for example, it's going to be hard for the sap to come up and then bridge across into the signwood. But if I have it nice and snug there, once that callus is over, that'll allow the sap to flow into the signwood.
That looks very sexy.
And then some grafting tape.
So you're starting well below the graft?
Yeah, I usually go from one end to the other and then back again. This has got a really good stretch to it, so it forms a really strong protection from the weather, and that's nice and firm. So we still need to put some bitumen paint on. Just dab the top, and that's done. All it needs is a label to say what it is, because otherwise it's an orphan. Who knows what it's going to be.
Now this gets thrown into a bed and grown on for another year. If someone was at home, they could chuck it in a pot, grow it on for a year,
Yep.
and then plant it out.
Yes, but it's probably better to be nurseryed for a year, given, you know, really good water, fertiliser, good soil, and that allows the root system to grow as big as possible. That's the most crucial thing for one of these to do in the first year.
Grafting is a great tool for growing fruit trees. I suppose in a way it allows us to cheat evolution and start to create and grow trees that are more suited to our own needs. You can go from this to this in 1 year. And as you can see, it's not a tricky process. And it opens up a whole world of possibility for us gardeners.